think it all sucks. I think it all sucks.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
You know, it goes back many years. Years ago, when we first met, I was a painter, and I had a studio. And that was really what we had in common at the time. But then we got involved in other things, and I went to law school. And there reached a point where we were interested again in art and really wanted to know what was going on, because we had missed 20 years from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. We were really not that much involved. So we started by looking around, and we had direction. And really, we're just looking at paintings. And actually, this apartment has changed radically. We started out with the idea of decorating. Howard hates when I say that word, decorating. But we realized that paintings didn't work. You know, we had to really change the colors of the walls, take off all the molding, so that the paintings would assert themselves. So I think, you know, we really became very involved in the integrity of the works we had up. And we read a lot. And gradually, our focus changed.
No, I think it's more, just more in tune with our nature and our politics. We're more interested in things that are contemporary and that seem relevant to the problems that we all face in a contemporary society, rather than dealing with historical, more precious works. So that concern, of course, led us to living artists and the ability to also develop relationships with these artists, because what was always very, very rewarding is not simply the object, but also the relationship that one can develop with individuals who have simply produced these objects as manifestations of their thinking, their ideas. And what's most interesting in a work of art is the idea that's behind it. The manifestation to certain of these artists would simply be secondary. Well, a quick answer to the word commission. I don't think it's, I suppose you could say it's a commission where you decide to do something with an artist that's part of his project. So you are providing a funding aspect, and what we like to do in consideration for the funding is to have some more active involvement in the gestation of the project as it develops. In terms of the the particular focus of the type of work that we're interested in. Barb, why don't you take a pass at that, and then we can talk about it a little bit more.
In terms of what?
Just the focus of the collection.
Well, the focus of the collection is really conceptually based. It has to do with how taking the artwork out of the gallery into the real world. And each of these artists, we really feel, has left the gallery space and is working with certain issues in the environment and creating art, working on a project that the end result, there may be an object there, so you could call it art, but it's really the project of critiquing the world around them. And all of these artists, there's a unique story about what their critique is.
Well, there are a couple of things I think that we have to feel quite compelled to comment upon. Although there are a lot of objects that you see in our home, and there are more objects, of course, that you don't see, our focus really is not to accumulate objects. It's not acquisitive in that sense. Now, we've been at it for some number of years, and it did start out in that classical way that there was an object accumulation aspect to the collection. But again, the artists that we have our focus on and who we are interested in and who are friends of ours, their work is more idea-based. It's more conceptually based. And if they had an alternative means of support, some of them might in fact not produce objects. Therefore, a lot of the things that we accumulate are really documents that in some way memorialize, transcribe, represent some aspects of a project, some aspects of an investigation that the artist was involved in. And there has not necessarily been the materialization of a particular commodity-based object that gets acquired.
And we're not interested in defining the moment, because that would mean that we have many different styles, many different focuses, and lots of objects around. So it's really a very personal vision that we have with these artists, and it's very satisfying just to pursue it. Yes, we really want to. A major turning point in our way of looking at art was through the artist Felix Gonzalez Torres. And we just knew that there was something very different with his work, something that really went beyond the object, in his stack pieces where everyone can have an artwork, everyone can take one piece of paper. So we really started with him and tried to collect him in somewhat of touching all of his different periods. And all these other artists, it's a slow process, but it just sort of happens that we'll have more of their work as time goes on.
I'd reiterate what Barbara said, that it's not so much collecting them in depth, but since our focus is on a relationship with a limited number of artists, and as we see these relationships are continuing, and you're continuing working on some projects with them, and therefore as a result of that you've acquired some evidences of those projects, you do end up acquiring evidences of their work, so to speak, in depth. I think what's very lucky is that these individuals are very interesting, and you know, there's no sense that we're tiring of what it is that they're doing or what it is that they're saying.
Why do you like art?
Why do I like art? It's a way to express myself. I like to see other people express themselves and ideas.
Can you live without art?
No, that's what I do. I'm collecting trash to make paper right now.
What is it? Oh.
It's like old flyers off walls. They got a lot of character to them. I'm gonna make some paper out of them. Some drawings.
So do you still think New York is the center of art?
This is the first time I've ever been to New York. I'm going to the Art Institute of Maryland, and I'm visiting New York today.
Oh. First time or?
Yeah,
First time?
this is the first time.
What's your impression about the New York visiting first time?
Oh, I love this city. I want to live here. Someday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I began collecting in 1993, seriously, and how? I decided that I had some spare money and that I wished to take a direction with the money I had, so art collecting seemed something that I've been holding back on and wanted to indulge in. First of all, I found a sculpture which was something I'd seen in London at much grander scale some years before, and immediately I knew I wanted this sculpture. And I realized at that moment that I was going to start collecting art. I think there's two things I would say about what I want to collect, or what I want to be a permanent feature of the collection. One is the aesthetics in the art. I want to collect works of art which I think are enduringly attractive and beautiful. And secondly, I feel that any artist who's going to achieve this enduring attraction is going to have a recognition for the past. I feel too much of modern art has now dissociated itself from what's gone before, trying to strike out into an individual purpose, whereas in fact the greater art and the more enduring art is that which has taken recognition and respect of what's gone before. To me, it's essentially a life process. I think where there is an artist who is successful, I'm very happy to be part of the supporting of that artist. But in general terms, I'm not out to support art itself. I think inherently art is a part of life we need to have. I'm just a small part of that. The strongest reason for buying a work of art is because I want it on my wall, and I think it'll elevate the circumstance within which I live.
Yeah? Why do you like art? Why do you like art?
So I guess
Answer, Didi. Answer. I'll give you
Do you like
answer.
art?
You answer.
you answer.
She's the artist. What?
Why do we like art? Come on, will you
I
answer?
can't even think why. I don't know.
Can you live without art?
No. Can't live without it.
No.
Do you think New York is still center of the art?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's definitely in decline.
No, it's changing.
Changing, yeah.
Different.
changing.
This isn't
Different.
it.
This isn't it.
This isn't it. It's other.
Great, thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye.
They became very famous. My background is collecting, but not at all contemporary. In my own family, and then through my wife's family, I was very much exposed to contemporary art, young contemporary art as well. And she's also those are things that we buy together, sort of, especially with young artists that are just part of the collection. We buy them because we like them. And it's a little bit of everything, really. We really don't, we see something we like, at, it could be at a benefit auction or in a gallery. And one of his most important labors. It's called The Myths, and he did actually series of prints, you probably know them.
Right.
And he did a few canvases of that size, and he put all the 10 images together in one grid. And I think it's great, something great to live with, because then you Warhol, but at the same time it's Mickey Mouse, and Here's a Joanna, which that one I just bought when, in the 80s, it was like, when Blumhelm took on a new artist, it was like, money in the bank, so so I bought this one, right as he joined the gallery. That's his painting here. And he was very famous for huge triptychs that were like enormous, 10 foot tall and 30 feet wide and things like that. And when the gallery closed, Lange de Harry, he moved on to Marlborough Gallery, and he's still there and is actually doing extremely well. And we actually sold a lot of his, of his paintings to museums and in Europe and to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, etc.
Why do you like art?
Because it makes me think about things besides paying the rent.
Okay. Can you live without art?
No.
Thank you.
Can you?
No.
Well, let's see. I've been collecting art for about 10 years, I would say.
And what was the impetus for your beginning to collect art?
Well, I've always been interested in paintings, or in paintings and in interiors. Every time I used to go to my friends' houses or my friends' apartments, I always used to look around and I used to really study how they would decorate their apartment or their houses. Well, I think whatever speaks to me, or whatever I feel attracted to, whatever I like, those are the artists that I buy for my collection, or the artists that I collect. So whatever I feel attracted to, that would really be my answer. I see. Well, at first when I started collection, no, I didn't really think about building a collection. But now, the more paintings that I buy, the more paintings that I own, little by little, I'm thinking about maybe building a collection. But then again, in the same fields, try to be consistent in my collection. For instance, I wouldn't buy, an abstract contemporary painting and then buy another painting from, let's say, 1910 or 1915, but to answer your question, yes, I would like to, one day have a nice, important collection. Usually I buy from galleries, or I buy from artists. Sometimes I have friends that tell me about a new artist that they have seen or that they have discovered, so they take me to their studios, or I have friends that tell me about friends. So basically from the word of mouth from different people here in New York, in the city.
Why do you like art?
Do I like art? I wouldn't be in a gallery.
I mean, why do you like art?
Oh, God, that's a really hard question. I suppose. Yeah, that's why you're asking it.
Yeah.
It's like religion, it gives you something to think about. It's spiritual. It's transforming. And gives me a lot to think about. That's it.
Can you live without art?
Can I live without art? I think it would not be such a nice place. The world would not be such a great place without art. Can we live without it? I don't think so.
So Fritz, tell me a little bit about your background and the history of Dietl International Services.
Well, I started to work in this business as an apprentice when I was 16 years old in Vienna. And I moved to New York 8 years ago. I worked here for a few years, and then I opened my own company 5 years ago. And the reason why we have been successful with my company is because this business definitely favors small companies. It's a very specialized industry, and I think a small company can service clients much better than large corporations because it's a very personalized, very specialized service.
Mm-hmm. You must see sort of the business in an interesting way. You see what comes and goes from galleries, museums, etc. What's your impression of the current situation in New York and the market, for example?
That is interesting because I opened my business at the very lowest point in the market, when the market was really down in the late 80s. And the business is definitely picking up, but it is not as it used to be. Back in the late 80s, Japanese clients, for example, would buy 30% of what Sotheby's and Christie's sold at their impressionist auctions, and these days it is more widespread, and I think collectors are smarter and more careful with what they're purchasing. There's definitely more activity, but people are more careful.
Not really. So it's really boring right now.
What do you think about
I think it all sucks. I think it all sucks. Only because just right now, for young artists, people don't respond to it as much as to the people who did in the 80s.
I'm not sure.
I still hope. That's why I still come out.
Can you give us some names that you are very much interested
Maybe Italian. Right now, I can't think of any. Maybe Spanish. But in terms of painting, I would probably include myself. I do different types. Painting. Well, I think for 1996, it doesn't make sense to call something abstract or figurative because after 100 years going into the next century, it's all language. We've all seen it before. These subdivisions don't matter.
What do you think about, like, art scenes going to be like
I think he'll probably respond to things that we can't see now, like different types of revolutions, political, industrial, just like before.